Hi, Ron. Thank you for joining. How are you today?
I'm doing well, Fernanda. How are you?
Good, thank you. So why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and maybe how you got into the CFA in the first place?
So I'm originally from the US, and then like through my university degree, I decided to do an exchange to Australia. What was originally supposed to be about 6 months ended up turning to about a year. And then I went back sort of beginning of 2008 to finish my degree, which is kind of the middle of the GFC. So when I finished, a lot of my friends were either going on to further education or couldn't really find jobs. So then I thought, why not try and go back to Australia, working holiday visa, and I can just do a lot more travel. And so worked a lot of odd end jobs, and then was lucky enough to get on. So there's two main supermarkets here, Coles and Woolworths. They dominate probably 80+% of the market
Oh,
share
wow.
here. And yeah, I got onto the Coles graduate program and was there for about 5 years, just kind of being groomed to be a like category manager is what they call it in the UK, or like a buyer or a merchant in the US. And so yeah, I did that for about 5 years and then got my permanent residency. I could probably look for other jobs. And then I said, do I really want to be doing this with my life? And then interesting enough, like through my university, I kind of saw like, professors that had like CFA after the name, and I saw some people studying for it, throughout university. And I thought, could do it one day, not sure. And then, when I was leaving Coles, I thought, well, what do I want to do kind of with my life? So I did a bit of travel and then came back and then looked at kind of the finance industry. I had a friend here, he was doing level 2 or level 3. So kind of chatted to him about it and his experience and kind of the time commitment. And I thought like if he could do it, then surely I can kind of do it. And then went to the National Australia Bank, and it's kind of good in the finance industry. You do get kind of a lot of I guess support to kind of do these designations. And so
Okay.
yeah, kind of like got into it that way. And interesting enough, like you kind of look at that vision of perhaps one day obtaining the charter, and then not fully kind of understanding the effort that kind of goes into getting it. And so yeah, I think I was a bit crazy as well, because I decided to do my chartered accounting and the FRM designation like all at the same time. So like in
Mhm.
terms of like time management and everything, happy to go into those questions when it comes.
Wait,
But
you did all three at the same time?
yeah, it was pretty crazy.
Why did you decide to study for all three?
Well, it's probably I just thought like going into the finance industry, like I might not have. We always talk about like transferable skills and moving sideways, but like in certain markets, it's kind of hard. Like Australia is very much recruitment firm focused, so it's like
Okay.
if you don't fit these super checkbox kind of items, you won't ever get the interview. Whereas maybe in other markets like the US, it's like the own companies doing their recruitment, and so
Yeah.
they may be more kind of I guess like looking into like cross transferable skills and stuff like that. And so I thought if I had the designations, that's something that can't take away regardless of the prior skill set working in like fast moving consumer goods. And yeah, they just wouldn't be able to like I guess it adds a bit of credibility to my application in those kind of situations.
If I can ask, between the
Mm.
CA, the FRM, and the CFA, which one was the easiest and which one was the hardest to obtain?
I'll probably say CA would be the easiest to obtain.
Okay.
FRM exams, I think their questions are harder, but I think the minimum passing score is lower. And so they're easier to pass, but the questions can be actually quite complex, and they could definitely go into a bit more depth than some of the CFA questions, but it's the same kind of prep. I think FRM level 1 is kind of like CFA level 1 light in a way, because it's not like, yeah, they're both like different in complexity. Like CFA is definitely covers a lot more in terms of volume. Like FRM is not like you only need maybe 3 or 4 months. Like CFA, sometimes you need longer for level 1. And probably like looking back, I didn't really start off doing the FRM designation. I failed level 2 exam once, and it pissed me off so much that I just decided to do the FRM as like something to take my mind off the failure of like spending 4 or 5 months studying for it. And
I got you. Wait,
but
the level two was the CFA one?
yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I
Okay.
did fail that one once. I passed level 1 and level 3 on the first time.
Okay.
Nobody likes failure, like especially if you spend like 5 or 6 months of your life and all that sacrifice to get an email. And like in Australia, you get the emails like 4 or 5 a.m. or something sometimes, and like you can't really sleep. And then all of a sudden, you get the failure, and then it like affects you kind of like your whole work day. You're like, I just want to take a sick day or something. Like you just feel a bit bummed, and like I was upset, like so much so that I ended up doing the FRM exam. to like, substitute kind of pain. It had nothing to do with like, intelligence. It had nothing to do with, not going through the material. I think like the key for me not passing, and I was helping some of my other friends that actually did pass, I was helping them in certain subjects. So like, it's not necessarily like intelligence. It's basically like, are you prepared for the exam? And like, going through the material is one thing, like doing some questions. Like, I did do a lot of questions, but I didn't do enough of practice exams. And so I think I got tripped up or tricked on a few questions, and I was pretty much borderline on that level 2 fail, which I think that's one of the harder things is like when you first starting out is like knowing how much time to commit. And it's like one of those things to get into a routine. And so like for me, it was pretty much like from home to work. I think at the time it was like half an hour, 45 minutes, on the train or something. So like I was,
Every day?
yeah, every day. And then I thought, well, I'll just use this time to really focus on watching a video. And so I use third-party providers. Like some people really enjoy reading and learning through reading. Like you kind of need to figure out what's best for you. And like for me, learning and like retaining information was much better through videos. I'm much more like a visual, audible person. And then like for me, it's like, watch it once and then try to remember it during lunch and then like watch it again on the way home or like watch something else if I had a good grasp of it. And so like doing that every day over 6 months, you can cover a lot of, a lot of videos because that's an hour and a half on the train. Like, as time progressed, I would use my lunches, to do like practice questions. And it's kind of tough because you might not remember a lot from something from a few months ago. But I think that is quite helpful.
So
And
basically, like video-based review, it helped you a lot also
yeah,
to retain things that you maybe have learned 3 to 4 months before.
that's right. Yeah, it's just like actually seeing, like, it's one thing to like go through material and like read something. Okay, yeah, I remember this formula. Then it's another thing, like 3 or 4 months later, to like see it in a question, and all of a sudden they reversed the reciprocal of the formula, and you're like, okay, I have to actually think about this, and I don't quite remember maybe all the inputs because they're giving me too many. Or I don't remember the exact like increase or decrease based on this kind of certain question. And so like doing those during lunch is trying to make like the best or most effective use of your time. And then like after work, like you can go to the CFA Society, you can find other kind of like people studying for your level. And if you have like a good group, you can kind of just study together and just, share the pain, at a cafe or at a restaurant or at a library or, at someone's house, if you, depending on what city you live in. And then I pretty much left the weekends free, and it was quite hard because like my birthday's in May as well. So like I didn't have a birthday for like 3 or 4 years. I'd always delay it. And I always told people like I can't stay out late. If you want to catch up, it's like 5 or 6 p.m. on Saturday. We can watch a movie, we can go to dinner, and then that's pretty much it. Because like I need to go home, I need to rest, and then I need to like get back at it on the Sunday morning. Some friends got it, and then other friendships, I guess that kind of like if you don't see them after a while, then you kind of slowly I guess like lose contact, and yeah, you do spread apart in that sense. But like you have to kind of be committed to like planning out. So like I was very detailed, I was very organized. Like I knew how many chapters there are, like how many pages, like what I should be reading through each day, like when do I want to finish by. And I would say like the key to passing, because that was one of your questions as well, is really going through exams. Like that was the key, I think, to every single level that I've done, was doing enough exams. And for level 1, it was 5 exams. Some people might need less, but for me, it was 5 exams. And now I felt confident after I got out of the exam, like even like halfway through the morning exam, like I knew I was going to pass. Like I was like, I just knew everything. Like it's a great feeling to have. And you're like, okay, this is actually worth it. Like for the level 2 exam, it was a bit more stressful. It's a bit harder kind of to like, I don't know, think through certain things, and I wasn't exactly as sure. And then sure enough, when I got the results, I was like borderline fail on the first time. But like the second time, I think I did like 8 or 9 exams. And like the key to like level 2, so I think level 1 is really like, make sure you understand and prepare your body for like a 6-hour exam, because it is kind of exhausting. Like the first exam I did, right, I was like, I'm just like dead, like on the couch, like, and then I spent the next day kind of revising maybe the morning exam, and then throughout the week, maybe I did the PM exam. And then, when you're only getting like, 40%, 30% right on the exam, it's not really a good motivator. But then as you kind of practice and you become, I guess, and you kind of like prepare, on those questions that you got wrong, like, you're turning those 40% accuracy to like 60% and then like 80%. And I always try to finish about a month before. And then I just did a lot of practice questions. Like the last 2 exams, it was like 80 something plus. I can't remember now because it was a while ago, but it was like 80+%. And then when I went into the exam, there were certain sections, like I know I got like nothing wrong.
And then
Yeah.
in terms of the CFA, in any of your tests, did you have to do it out of pocket, or were you going through scholarships or sponsorships or something from
No,
another?
did it all myself. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Even the companies like I work for, and you might have a great company that will pay for it. They will pay for the charter. Even when I'm at Deloitte now, they only pay for one. So I choose the most expensive, of course. My company was very good because they were supportive of it. They would give me like I would get like 2 days. I'll get the exam's on Saturday, but I'll get like the Friday and the day before. So like the Thursday, Friday as like study day. So that would be like paid leave. And then they would be quite flexible for anything else I needed as well. So like, if I needed to like say like, oh, I'm going to start at 10 to study before, like they would be okay with that. Or if I need to leave at 4 or 3 or something to like go study, like they would kind of be okay with that as long as I kind of like maintain kind of the workload.
I got you.
And then like I would just use annual leave to like take at least the week off before.
Oh, you took the
Sometime.
whole week off before taking the test?
Yeah, I would have the Thursday, Friday, and then I
Okay.
would take the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And then basically,
What would
I
you
mean,
do during that time? Were you cramming or were you sleeping? Like,
no, both. I would kind of like, I always wanted to like go to bed at a decent hour.
okay.
Try and wake up as like a normal time, as I would for the exam, and kind of like start my prep as I would like, the 9 a.m. or something like on the Saturday, and kind of get used to that routine. But like the Friday before, I wouldn't do much. And I would just sleep in as much as possible. And I would just, maybe I'll do a little bit, like, 20 minutes or half an hour or something, kind of like trying to memorize something like I've kind of forgot or I was thinking about. And then like pretty much not do anything. Like you kind of do all the hard work leading up to that day. You don't want to be cramming the day before, like wearing yourself out and then going into an exam with like lack of sleep and tiredness. And so, yeah, like the
How
day
many
before I
months
wouldn't.
did it take you on average for like the level 1 to study?
I started in January, pretty much like right at New Year's. And then
Okay.
like I would say I aim to finish maybe like a month before. So I'd finish like early May, and then I would use maybe 2 weeks or a week and a half or something like that to just do questions and revision. And then I would do another week and a half or so to do like practice exams.
Practice exam. Okay.
Yeah. And like that last week I was doing maybe like, the Saturday before I was doing an exam. Sunday I was revising those answers. Then next day do an exam or morning exam and then review in the afternoon or something like that. And I just kept progressing until maybe like that Thursday, and then the Friday before I just didn't do much.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's still a lot. Like you really did kind of like switch your routine to fit CFA studying. It wasn't just kind of like, oh, I'm going to do it in the afternoon and then just a couple hours. It's really just a rigorous kind of mindset that you need to put yourself in almost.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
And I would say like your university is going to like be different, and like your major, like, what you're going through is going to be different for everyone. I would say like even though I did business, like I was more economics focused. And so like I didn't really have a lot of the finance and like derivatives, although that was interesting. Like I didn't really have a lot of derivatives knowledge. And so you might have to put in a lot of effort for certain areas, like even for ethics, like even if you read it, even if you're trying to memorize it, like when you get to the questions, like, like there could be like 2 right answers. This is what you often feel like sometimes when you're reading it for the first time and those questions. And so yeah, it does take like a bit of practice to get used to the question formats and the answers and how they try and trick you to make sure you really understand like a certain topic, and common pitfalls. Like that's quite easy in level 1. They'll play with you with like decimals. Like if you were to put in something backwards or like something wrong, like you'll get like you'll think it's the right answer, but it's actually the wrong answer. Things like that. And then it becomes more nuanced in the level 2 exam, I would say. But
Yeah, I got you. You're a manager at Deloitte right now.
that's right. Yeah.
Okay. Was the CFA in any way helpful to getting that job, for example, or is the CFA something that you considered to be a valuable asset for getting a job, for example, in finance like that, coming from economics or from other backgrounds?
Yes, yeah. So that was actually brought up in my interview when I went from, I guess, the industry or the banks into Deloitte as well. So that I think professional services, like any of them would value kind of the certifications. Like if you don't have it, but you start there as like a graduate, then it probably doesn't matter so much. But like coming in external into services, they do value that. And I think that's pretty standard. And then basically any kind of the asset management, probably companies would value it depending on like who's your interviewer, if they have it and things like that. So yeah, it is an asset. It's probably something, if I could go back in time, I would tell myself like the earlier I do it, the better the benefit as well. Because I have a friend, he passed level 2 still at university, and I think that really helped him get a job. Initially he went into EY, right? And so like I think the earlier you can do it, the better the benefit is. But it's not like, when I got the charter, you kind of feel different, because like something you worked for like all this time, then all of a sudden like, oh, it's after your name. Like you think like your world's going to change. It doesn't really change that much, but it certainly like does help you get interviews. And like it's going to be up to you and how you perform in those interviews to actually like get the job. Like they're just not going to give you a job because you have a charter. Like there could be other candidates that have other qualifications, maybe even some like have a PhD or something like that, right? So it really depends on how you're going to interview.
So it
But it
gets
does
your
help.
foot in the door, and then it's up to you, really.
That's right. Yeah, it does help. I'm glad I have it. I wish I could have done it earlier back now at my experience, but everyone's journey is different. And so, there are people that are even older than me doing it because it's something that, either they want to do, or like maybe, it's their midlife crisis at that time and they want to kind of switch into finance. And
Yeah.
it's just a way for them to like network as well. And I think, people often think, the charter helps, but it's often the people you meet, like within the industry, even at CFA events, especially if you're in like a larger capital city, like Melbourne's like financial city is probably bigger than a lot of others, but it's not like the biggest. And so like, Sydney would be bigger, London and New York would be definitely a lot bigger, those financial markets. And so like, really having the contacts as well can, through conversations can often say like, oh yeah, actually you're interested in this, something like we discussed like 6 months ago. We have an opening, do you want, are you free? Can you come in for an interview? Yeah. And it's simple as that.
So it's also kind of like the network that you grow through the program as well. That kind of helps you meet new people too, right?
That's right.
I want to circle back to what you mentioned about starting earlier. If you had, for example, like a resource while you were in university, do you think that might have been useful?
Yes, because well, so I grew up with my grandparents, right? And they've had high school education from like the 50s. And so like my whole like career planning from a small town in South Carolina in the US, right, is not like like I didn't know what I didn't know at that time. And so like, like I think if I had somebody kind of there to support me, and the professors were good, but like in terms of like career advice and stuff, like it would have definitely helped if somebody would have been there to kind of say like, these are your career options, like these are what, employers are looking for, this is what the industry's like, maybe a certain amount of people have these certain qualifications or things like that. And it's almost like Inception, right? Planting the seed. And I guess like, I did see professors, right, that had CFA after their name, but I didn't really understand what it was. I did a bit of research and I said, oh, maybe one day I'll do it, but it looks pretty hard. That's a lot of time commitment, so maybe not. And then fast forward, 5 years after I finished, like, oh, here I am in the program, right? And so like maybe just that random chance like planted something, and then obviously having your friend doing it like certainly kind of cemented that. But I think it does like provide a lot of benefit to show students who may not make similar backgrounds to me, but may not know the benefits, but also like the career options and kind of like where you're best placed and like what's your strengths and kind of things you need to think through. Because like it's very hard to know what you want to do in life when you're 18. It's even harder like when you kind of come out of university and you're like, oh, okay, I need to make money now to kind of pay off my student loans or something like that, right? And there's a lot of jobs that require or would like to have a charter holder. Doesn't necessarily mean you're going to enjoy it either. And so you kind of have to figure out what you enjoy.
That's an important point too, because I feel like, well, you happen to have the CA, the FRM, and the CFA, so it's pretty much you have if you wanted to go into risk management, you could, right? But it is something to think about when you're starting to decide which certification to get, what space in the finance industry would enjoy doing, right?
That's
Also,
right.
in
Yeah.
terms of like benefits, right? What would you say is the biggest benefit or set of benefits that having the sort of CFA certification specifically has given you?
Mm. There's a lot of like I would probably call it like the soft skills and tangibles. So like for me in my role, it's like the ability to quickly disseminate a large amount of information to kind of come up with like key points and like, either areas I need to ask more questions on or like things that I can see that could be a risk or something to the business, right? So for me, that's kind of like the soft skills and intangible kind of aspects of it. And then there's kind of like the technical aspects of like, just having like a good understanding of financial products and like, a solid finance foundation, to be honest. And so like when you go into like meetings and stuff, once they know you're a charter holder, it does build kind of trust and credibility. Sometimes it builds a bit of camaraderie as well, because people that go through something difficult in life, often join hands and kind of like have that shared commonality of something
Yeah,
painful
shared
that they both
struggle makes
experienced.
friends. Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, it kind of works in like different ways. And like once you pass the first one, you kind of say like, well, I can pass one of these exams, I can probably pass the next two. But if you do fail again, then you kind of just have to find the resilience in you if you really want the charter to really kind of keep going through this, because yeah, it's not easy, but it's certainly not impossible, right? There's a lot of charter holders out there. So like if someone can do it, from a small town in South Carolina, like anyone can kind of do it, right? It's just the amount of time and effort.
Thank you so much, Ron, for stopping by. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Fernanda. Have a good evening and chat soon. See you, Fernanda.
Bye.
Bye.